corruption. It's nothing but a corruption of Noah and his ark. Can you see that? That's what it is. Those aren't superior race. If they want to know if there's an Atlantis out there, ask me. I'll tell them no, there's not. I mean, and then they can quit trying to find it. Sure will save them a lot of research money, wouldn't it? Donate it to us and we can build us a building. Yeah. And also parallels, and then she goes on to say, also parallels most of the old fairy tales, Gwydion, of the major Welsh folk heroes. Only Gwydion is especially absent from the Arthurian legends. Rees also asserted that the Knights of the Round Table are barely disguised Welsh deities made acceptable to a medieval audience. They're just disguised gods. And she says one thing back here on the Wheel of the Year. She has in the back a glossary. You know what that is, don't you? I just thought it has a glossary. Wheel of the Year. A conceptualization of the eternal cycle of time. In pagan mythology, the goddess turns the wheel of the year, bringing everything to its season, taking the Big Dipper around. They thought that was what it was going to give them the seasons. They didn't know we were turning. If they had any idea what the Big Dipper was like, they'd been embarrassed, wouldn't they? Then she says, the wheel of the year is symbolized by either a wreath, a ring, a snake holding its tail in its mouth, or an 8-spoked wheel. And the 8 spokes, you got 8 spokes. That's all I'm going to read of that. I've been wanting to just give y'all some documentation. What we've been talking about is Halloween. When you're talking about the druids, you're talking about Halloween. But it's the same thing as the saturnalia. Halloween is less deceptive. The most dangerous of the two is Christmas. Everybody thinks that's some Christian thing. They think Halloween over here is some evil thing. No, Christmas is more evil because they've covered it up and put a veneer on top and painted it pretty. And put Jesus' name on it, yeah. And that makes it acceptable. And they've made it a thing for children while they go get drunk out here at their parties. And it's Baal and Grove worship. Constantine brought it into the church, brought the saturnalia in the church, said he's losing the empire to all these marauding hordes, and says, I'm going to lose the empire. Well, Rome was sacked by the Celts right around 390 BC. And they were in 325. This is what's amazing. Around 390 BC, the Celts sacked Rome. And literally, like you sack a quarterback, it means to destroy. Just burn it to the ground. And then they were a nation all this time. They actually became a nation became an empire around 27. They were building all this time. Around 27 BC under Julius Caesar, about that time. Could have been a little bit earlier. And then in the late 5th century BC, what he had tried to keep from happening in 325 by amalgamating paganism and Christianity, what he thought he could keep and happened in the 5th century AD. The Visigoths came in there and leveled Rome. And that was the fall of the Roman. When you hear of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, it's when the Visigoths came in and just destroyed them. See, God's not going to let these guys keep going. Now, I'm going to show you how this connects. What I was saying, when you're going to talk to somebody, we can find all kinds of paganism out there in the world. I got tons of books on it, all kinds. I got stacks of it in my library. I can't even begin to tell you all of it. You can find proof, but what you got to do is document what's out here in the world, document how it ties up in the Bible. Now, I got a book written by evidently just a Celtic historian. This is called Celtic Myth and Magic. I'm going to take it and show you how you match this up with Halloween. When you think of Halloween, everything you look up druids. The druids they worshiped the tree. They worshiped Baal, by the way, and they worshiped the sun, and they worshiped the serpent. So, and the keys was the sun, the serpent, and they wore a serpent's egg around their neck. But you always have to look up Celts, Gauls, druids, and many other subjects that are associated with this. Look up the Arthurian legends. Look up, y'all. How many of y'all got a McClintock and Strong? I mean, not a McClintock and Strong, but a Hastings. Hastings got more on this than anybody's got. It's got more than McClintock and Strong. Sometimes McClintock and Strong is better on certain things. The Hastings is just saturated. Look up sea gods. Look up the Arthurian legend. Look up Aryan. Look up druids, Celts, and it'll tell you what volume it's in. If you got an index volume, it'll tell you what volume it's in. It'll tell you what page it's on and what column it's in. And when it gets to the main, if it gets to the C volume, it may go on for pages and pages sometimes. Like I said, I'm not brilliant. I just know how to pick up a book and open it and look at it and read it. That's really all you have to do. But one thing you do have to do, you just have to know what you're looking for. Look for those things when you're looking up Halloween. But let me read a couple of things to you here. I've got some things marked in here. This is in this Celtic book. It's talking about Samhain being summer's end, when the sun's power waned and the strength of the gods of darkness, winter, and the underworld grew great. And then he goes on to say that it would appear probable that the Celtic state worship was what is called solar, or sun. That's their state of worship is sun worship. All its chief festivals related to points in the sun's progress, the equinoxes having been considered more important than the solstices. And I said, why is it that each one of these systems have the death of their sun god at a different time? Well, Elaine McCoy explains that in her book Sabbats. And she tells you why. And it makes all kinds of sense. You can pick out either the beginning of the waning of the light, and that happens at the autumn equinox. When you get to the autumn equinox, just kind of think of this. You're coming out of summer. You're coming out of the summer solstice, June 21st, and the sun is waning. It's getting dimmer. And the time that you have an equal equinox, an equal night, or the time that you have the sun being 12 hours a day, and you got 12 hours of night. That's called an equinox. So the day after that, the day after the equinox, it's just a little darker. So you understand what I'm saying? That's why they said, well, the next day it's going to be darker than it was this day. And we're headed towards the darkness, so they picked out the day where it started getting dark. The Romans picked out the day where it was totally dark. And the Franks, the ones with the Mardi Gras, they picked out the day where the resurrection of their sun god came about in the spring at that equinox, at the spring equinox. See, each one of them makes sense. You can pick whichever one you want to have to be your main holiday. Among the Druids, the main holiday was what we call Halloween, or All Souls Day with the Roman Catholics, or All Hallows Eve. All Souls Day was the next day, and they had this All Hallows Eve where they honored the dead, and the dead are supposed to come back, and they started feeding the dead. Now, this is where it really gets mixed up. They left out food for the dead. The dead would come back, and when your children put on these outfits, they're supposed to be the dead coming up to the door wanting food because they fed the dead. And how can I explain all this? They fed the dead, and it eventually evolved in eating the dead. And a ghoul is someone who eats dead, eats people, or is someone who eats dead bodies. It is gross. And so and they would call their gods were their ancestors. These were ancestors coming back. Gosh, remember this? Ancestors. Halloween. Your kids putting on their Halloween outfits are supposed to represent dead ancestors coming to get food. And it eventually, if you'll keep something corrupted long enough, it'll evolve into something else, won't it? And they finally evolved it into eating the dead. That's a ghoul, or that's a cannibal. Back to the priests of Baal at the saturnalia at Christmas time. It sounds like a lecture, doesn't it?